talk about some good old-fashioned writing stuff today. Howdy, hey folks, can you believe it? It's Wednesday word time already. We're going to talk about cutting what I call lazy language from the pieces you're writing. I'm going to put lazy writing into 3 buckets: jargon, fillers, and puff-up words. I've been seeing a lot more of this lazy language start sneaking up into things. I think we're trained from an early age, especially if you're new to content or you don't spend a lot of time with it, that big words make you sound smart. I'd also say a lot of writers who first started out probably thought the same thing. I know I have my dictionary and thesaurus, and I always looked for as many syllables as I could shove into a word. It's a nice little ego trip to go and use a fancy word like sesquipedalian, but most folks have absolutely no idea what that even means. The same is probably going to be true for a fair amount of your content if you're using a lot of this lazy language. By lazy, I'm not calling you lazy, I'm bringing up the fact that it lacks intentionality. The vast majority of writing work, as we covered in the editing video, is the editing process. That's where things get better, get smarter, get simpler. A lot of folks also get stuck in that first draft stage. They run out of time and go, well, good enough, we'll just push it out and see what happens. And when you lack the slack in your process to take some time to really reconsider the words you're choosing, that allows lazy language to flourish. Now, the business case for this is the ability to explain your product or service clearly to your buyers. Buyers are as pressed for time as you are, so they want the easiest path to reach the decision they need to make. If you muddy that path with your lazy language, they're just not going to buy from you. I know it's hard in a lot of industries. This is how a lot of this content looks. And that's my point, is your buyers are lost in this sea of lazy language-filled content. You can stand out from the crowd by eliminating a lot of that lazy language. So how do we cut lazy language? Let's talk about the 3 buckets we mentioned earlier. First up, we'll cover jargon. With jargon, we're talking about the industry-specific or highly niche words that we kind of substitute in lieu of actual everyday language. This happens naturally in a lot of workplaces. You just come up with quicker ways of saying things. Or you develop acronyms, initialisms, abbreviations. And this is true for pretty much every industry. You know, the other day I was using tofu, mofu, and bofu to talk about the sales funnel. If you're in sales or marketing, you probably know what that means. But if I put that in a piece in a more general audience, they're gonna have no clue. Now, that could be a strategy used to keep them on your own site. Maybe you have a tofu, mofu, bofu explainer to link to. But when you start getting lost in so much jargon, it becomes a replacement for thought. There is some value in including some jargon. It's a bit like the entry fee to get into an industry. If you use a few of those terms correctly and intelligently, people recognize you know what you're talking about and that you belong in the space. Again, it's going to be the balance of, I include maybe a few words like that versus an entire piece reading like a sales pitch. So when you're going through and editing and cutting this out, look for those kind of jargony words. And if you're publishing something to a broader audience, ask someone who is a part of that audience. There may be a few kinds of those jargony words that you don't really think about because it's just automatic for you. But someone who's not in this space every day might catch a few of those. And if they're asking you questions on, what does tofu mean in this? Is it something I get to cook in a delicious meal? Then you know you found something you need to adjust. You've also got filler words. I've already used a few filler words in this video. These are going to be big chunks of tiny words that take the place of maybe 1 or 2 words. Consider when it comes to. I've used it a few times already in this video, and it's great for filling in some space. But consider regarding. All of those could fit there as well. Filler words are the natural words that we speak when in conversation. And sometimes these trickle down into content. A lot of that's going to be some of that early drafting, get it out of my head, put it on the page, and then we never really think to go back to it, because it also helps pad word count. If you're on the clock and you want a piece that looks really good and really long, which again are not the same thing, then fillers fill in a lot of that gap. So to get rid of fillers in your content pieces, you're looking for those groups of tiny words that all fit together. Now, tools like Grammarly and ProWritingAid, some of those AI assistant kind of tools, can help identify and pull out those words for you. But even if you're just reading it on your own, if you're finding strings of like 4, 5, 6 words that all have 2 or 3 or 4 letters, you've probably found a good chunk of filler words. I'll also throw qualifiers into this. Again, I've used quite a few when I've been talking. There's quite right there, pretty much. Again, these are words that when we speak just tend to come naturally. In writing though, you can cut those and make your point much more clear. And then we have what I call puff-up words. These are ones you see a lot when there's like official press conferences or when someone's getting interviewed on the news. They want to sound smart in front of the camera, so they start using big fancy words. This would be, at approximately 8:30 a.m., I entered the premises of the domicile. When the easier way to say this is, about 8:30 a.m., I entered the house. I guarantee you it does not make you sound smarter. In fact, the more of these kind of puff-up words you put in here, the harder it's going to be for the average reader to follow you. What it comes down to is you don't want to alienate your potential buyer. These puff-up words tend to make things sound overly formal. You sound like you're at a press conference. And most people don't want to sit through a press conference like that. So why would they want to read one in the pieces you're producing? So when you're editing and you're trying to get rid of these puff-up words, look for words that are longer than like 4 syllables, maybe 12 to 15 characters or longer. These ones can be sneaky too, because they'll often appear as a synonym of something much shorter and easier to use. The example that always gets me is some of the synonyms around use, specifically leverage and utilize. Leverage and utilize are use, just with a whole bunch more characters and syllables. Yes, some of these words have highly specific connotations, and this is where you, as a human editor, have to use your brain and think through a few of those. But 4 out of 5 times, use, perfectly fine to use. I will add one caveat for the ghost writers out there. If you're ghost writing some pieces and you're seeing a bit more jargon come back into it, or the CEO really just loves the word leverage, it's understandable that you just kind of roll with that. So as you build a rapport with whoever you're writing on behalf of, start planting some of those small wins in there. You'll know which battles to pick, which words really bother someone, and which words you can probably start moving away. And if you get stuck trying to communicate this concept, start putting it in terms of the value to that subject matter expert's buyer or audience. I think too often we forget about the business case against lazy language. And it's our job as content writers to always have that business case at the core of what we're producing for our clients. And as you talk through with your subject matter expert how this lazy language can detract from that business case, it makes your job as the writer a heck of a lot easier. So that's my bit about lazy language. This is the kind of stuff that as you start cutting from your writing, you'll make yourself a better writer and you'll produce better converting content. Eliminate jargon, filler words, and puff-up words, and really embrace the philosophy of simple is smart. Thanks for watching, gang. Comment, like, check out a few of the other videos, and I'll see you soon for the next Wednesday Word.